Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battishill, and I want to know, what's your next move? Hi there, I'm Arlene Battishill, your host and resident provocateur, and I am thrilled to have my good friend Jim Edwards on the show today. Jim is one of the most extraordinary entrepreneurs I have ever met, and I've learned so much from him. And just by way of a little bit of background, Jim and I encountered each other on Facebook probably a couple of years ago, and we were, I would say, Jim, circling around one another in some respects. And we ended up working together on a project where we launched an online training program for entry-level people into the world of Facebook advertising. And that was really wonderful. And I just enjoyed so much having that time working with Jim, one of the smartest people I've ever met. But Jim has a software company, and he has developed the most amazing software programs for people who are selling on the internet. And all of them, I would say, have to do with how you write sales copy, ad copy, email copy to get people to become buyers. And he's been phenomenally successful with that, probably most famous for his amazing program called Funnel Scripts. So if there's anything else you want to share about your background or bio, Jim, please feel free to add to this, and then we'll get underway.
Well, number one, Arlene, I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here. And I echo all the kind things you said about me right back at you. You are one of the hardest working, smartest people I have come across in this world. So that is is definitely a compliment. Not one that I give lightly. So
I know that. Thank you. I'm honored. It's like, holy cow, I'm on my knees bowing to you right now, Jim. It's like, oh my God, you've actually said something complimentary.
Hey, no, I don't know.
Me, just in general, because you are, you're a hard ass because you have really high expectations and standards, and you demand the best of people. And that's one of the things I love about you most in working with you, and you as my friend.
Well, so I appreciate that.
Honored.
Thank you. I don't know how I got the reputation as being the grumpy marketer, but I'll wear it.
Well, that doesn't suit you because I do not know you nor experience you as grumpy.
There you go.
Well, I know that time is short for you today, so I want to make the most of it. Can you talk about what you're doing right now in the world of work?
Basically, what I'm doing now is trying to help people be able to hit the easy button in their entrepreneurial businesses. And when I say hit the easy button, I mean hit the easy button in two key areas. One, being able to create sales copy, create sales materials, to create the sales funnels that they need to create, especially if they are non-sales people. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that I'm doing is helping people to create content where the world runs on content now. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all these things that it used to be when I started out, creating content and adding value to the world meant that if you came up with an article a week and put that out, people thought you were the second coming. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to stay on people's radar with social media and all just what I call the news feed mentality that people have, that it's harder than ever to stay on people's radar with adding value. And so I'm focusing on creating tools that make it easy, again, for people who are time starved or who are not able to create content or don't know how or don't have experience with it, to be able to get out of their head the value that they want to share with their potential target markets. So those are my two. I really call that the liberal arts side of the internet, meaning the content and the stuff that you communicate with people. And so often you see people they're really focused on the technology, on the how do I get that page up technically, how do I get that graphic made, how do I optimize this process, how do I set up this autoresponder, how do I hook up a payment processor. But the problem is for people is that those tools are getting easier and easier and easier. And what they find is, okay, I've spent all this money on this system to be able to sell. And then it's like, oh crap, I can set up a page with the click of a button, but I have no clue what to say on that page or what to say in that video. So that's really my sweet spot. Over the last 50 years of life, it's all led me to this moment of being able to help people be able to do that by creating literally software that they can fill out a form, whack a button, copy and paste, and get an amazing result. So that's what I'm focused on.
And I want to ask you one question about the content, but just for anyone, if this is even possible, if there's anyone who's listening that has not yet had the experience of some of your software programs, they are, excuse the expression, fucking mind-blowing, because I remember two things so distinctly. I remember the first time I used your program, Funnel Scripts, and the other program, the 3-hour Kindle Book Wizard. And I finished using those things, and I used both of them before I met you. And I thought to myself, who the fuck is this guy and how did he figure out how to do this? Because you just type in, you fill in this form and you click a button and there are 100 different ways of saying a headline and 100 different ways of the ad copy you want to use for a Facebook ad. There's 100 different iterations of the same thing for the sales copy that you would use. And I mean, the learning that I got, and I was a really good copywriter until I encountered Funnel Scripts, and I just thought, I don't know shit from Sherlock after looking at this, because I thought, I'm never writing my own copy again, because this program is so extraordinary that I don't know why anyone would ever spend the time trying to write their own copy when all you have to do is plug in your information and boom, boom, boom. And it was the same thing with the 3-hour Kindle Book Wizard, where I could just enter in the information and literally in an hour, I had everything that I needed, because I also then used another one of your programs that was I think it was the Easy Sales Wizard or all of
Easy Sales Copy Wizard.
Yeah, Easy Sales Copy Wizard, where I just, I just filled out forms on these different programs and put together the freaking book in an hour. And I thought, oh my God, who are you? And so
That's funny.
I can just tell you, for me personally and professionally, what you've created has made my life infinitely easier, because for me, I hate the details. I don't want to deal with this kind of stuff. I do it really well, but I just don't want to deal with it. And the fact that you created something that enabled me to just enter some information and click a button, that leaves me free to go and do all the other things that I need to be doing in my business. So I deeply appreciate what you have done. Now, let me ask you one question about what you said about helping people create content before we get into the heart of our conversation today. Why is content so important today?
Well, the internet has always run on content. I mean, they called it, when it first started, they called it the information superhighway. And so the internet has always run on content. Think about all the pages that you go to, things that you read, just social media, things that you look at. It's all based around content, either video content, picture content, or text content. And so for people to pay attention to you, you've got to add value to their lives. And the way you add value to someone's life is through content. And there's really two layers of content. There's paid content and there's free content. And the free content is how you lead people to the paid content. Because and free content is stuff like articles and stuff on Instagram and pictures and memes and live videos and recorded videos and tips and just all this giant bunch of little tidbitty things that you can put out there in the world that people can look at and read and absorb and go, oh, damn, I should pay attention to what this person's doing. Let me like them, share them, follow them, friend them. And that's how the whole process starts now. That's how it works. So if you're going to ask somebody to do something, you have to give them something in return. I mean, that's just how it works. And I don't think most people even understand it's that basic. So the way you add value is with content, and then the way you make money is with content that people pay you for, whether it's content that's delivered by you personally, if it's done through an ebook, a video program, consultation, software, all that stuff. So
Absolutely. And, I was just thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about back when, the mobile devices that became ubiquitous. Everybody had them, and now everyone has them, and children have them when they're 2 years old. And this is just, another appendage. And I can remember talking with people about, we were joking that this was the end of civilization because it was all the texting that was going on back and forth between people. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is the end of people ever reading. They will never, ever go into a library and read anything. Only what I came to understand is that people are reading more now than they probably ever did in the history of reading and education. They are voracious consumers of knowledge and information and learning. And because we now have this technology that enables us to consume that information very quickly and very easily, of course, that's why the content is so important, because there are, probably 2 billion people on the planet that are using mobile devices to access information that's important to them. And so, to your point, if you're out there delivering value to people with the ultimate goal of generating income or revenue, then you have to be delivering content, because that's how you create the trust and a sense of kinship with people, where people feel that what you say really resonates with them, and therefore you are somebody that they should pay attention to and ultimately buy from. And I would imagine in your own experience with your programs, and given how much you are all over the place on social media, that it is not very difficult to sell to people at this point in your career as an online marketer, because you've put so much content out there. Would you say that's fair to say?
Yes, but the one thing I want to say in addition to what you just said is that people are reading and absorbing more content than ever, but they're doing it in smaller bites from a much wider group.
Yes,
absolutely.
So
it used to be, hey, what book are you reading right now? So literally, remember, you're old enough to remember this too. Remember before the internet, and it's like, hey, I'm reading this book by so-and-so right now. There were book clubs. People would get together in person and talk about it. They were all reading the same book. Now you might get the same amount of information, but you're going to get it from 1,000 different sources.
Absolutely. Such a great point.
So you've got to make sure your stuff stands out. And that's a key. And the way you do that is not trying to appeal to everybody, but by becoming an authority for a very narrow and deep group of people on a very narrow and deep line of topics that are important to those people. That's how you do it.
Absolutely. And, this ties right into, what you created in the 3-hour Kindle Book Wizard, because one of the things that I know you've always talked about with that particular program is that you create a book as your way of showing people that you are the authority on whatever topic it is that you've written about.
Right.
Yeah. And so, having a book, I know for my own, from my own experience, having a book and having written a book and it being out on Amazon, it's the greatest door opener in the world, because I can show that I'm an authority on this particular topic. And I now have people coming to me because of that book. It's not like I wrote that book to go out there and, become an author and be a famous person and sell a bunch of books. No, it was what I was using as a way of attracting potential business for myself. And with what you developed in the 3-hour Kindle Book Wizard, made my life so much easier, because there's no shortage of book ideas that I have in my head. It was always a shortage of time. And what you developed and brought to market was something that now makes everybody's life so much easier. And if anyone who's listening is expert at something, there's no reason for you to not just go and create a book that you can then use as a way of attracting business. And, what was the rationale behind you creating that particular program?
Well, it's interesting how everything kind of coalesces or culminates. The big thing is I wrote my first book, took me 4 years to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I just over the years have seen what needs to go into a book, what needs to go into content, what people are really looking for, and then just looking around and saying, you know what, people are doing this an old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. People are writing a book the same way they wrote a book as soon as typewriters were invented back in the 1800s, literally.
Yeah, for sure.
They're trying to gut it out at the keyboard, and I realized that we can use technology and strategies to be able to come up with content super, super fast. But the germ of this idea actually came from when I was actually a syndicated newspaper columnist for 10 years, and I would interview people, and we'd record the interview and then transcribe the interview. And I was doing this before you saw it in major magazines, and
Mm-hmm.
and we're just basically the article was a transcript of the interview. Mm-hmm. And then I started seeing big magazines doing it, and I realized that it's not about the format, the dyed-in-the-wool way that we've always done it. It's about what's the end result that we want to create. How can we use our experience? How can we use tools? How can we use technology? How can we use strategies to get that end result faster? Mm-hmm. And so that's really become my guiding thought process. And then understanding enough about stuff like developing software and whatnot. I'm not a software developer, but I know how to talk to software developers to tell them what I want to put on the front end, what I want to put on the back end, how I want it to spit out on the back end. And then I let them do their job to figure out how to marry up the two things that I want to have happen. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I just think about, okay, it used to be, how many months was it going to take me to write this book idea out into a full-blown book? And now I'm thinking, okay, where am I going to find an hour? Because that's all it's going to take.
Well, and you also look at how people have changed. People do not typically, for a business book, look at business books in the airport or in the library. They are getting shorter. Yeah, people's attention spans are getting shorter. It goes back to understanding that news feed mentality. Mm-hmm. They have a desire to get a result, but they don't have the time or energy or effort or attention span to spend 300, 400 pages worth of time getting it. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, if you understand how books are actually created and what the purpose is behind them, they don't have to be as long as they are, but they're as long as they are because that's what people expect when they buy a book. Mm-hmm. So they expect a book to be 300 pages long, so that's why it is. I had a really cool conversation with a gentleman who I'm sure you've heard of, J. Conrad Levinson. He created the whole guerrilla marketing series, and he and I became buddies over the years. He passed away several years ago, but he said, Jim, the cool thing about a book is that it's basically one or two ideas that you have to spin up into 300 pages. I have a friend of mine who published a really popular diet book that the whole premise of the diet book was that you need to eat 2 tablespoons of fiber a day and walk for at least 20 or 30 minutes and you'll lose weight. He said he had to explain that over 300 pages. So the thing is, if you give yourself permission to do things differently and say, you know what, I can prove that I'm smart without having to do in this case with a book, 300 pages. Mm-hmm. And people are more than willing to accept it. In fact, they're refreshed by it. And that doesn't just apply to books, but it applies to your Facebook posts. It applies to your articles. It applies to your live videos that you do. I think, who was it? Mark Twain said, I would have written you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote a long one. You actually, and I think it was Einstein who said that if you really want to, and I'm paraphrasing terribly, but if you want to really prove how smart you are, you're only smart if you can explain complicated stuff in simple terms. So
yeah, that really is the key. And I think people are really looking to get to the point quickly. And in the way that we have understood reading and writing in the past, there is there has been a commonly accepted way that we go about writing and consuming what we're reading. And it involves a lot of, flourishes and,
Yeah.
Expanding on different ideas or expressing your thoughts more or getting into a level of detail that really isn't actually moving the story forward. And I think to your point about the way people are consuming information and wanting little bits and pieces, they want to get to the point. They want that thing that is going to help them solve the problem they have, ease the pain that they're feeling, enable them to move forward in their life. And then they feel like you are a freaking genius because you gave them the key to whatever it is that is now allowing them to move forward in life. So just really magnificent things that you've done. Now, I want to go back in time a little bit here because this is always what I find to be the most interesting thing about entrepreneurs, especially people like yourself who have been just phenomenally successful, that, when you look at the person, when people look at you from the outside, they say, oh, this is Jim Edwards. He's done all these amazing things. He's made all this money and everything. And, very highly respected in the world of internet marketing. And you never get the struggle that those people went through to get to the point where we're now all seeing the end result of all of that work. And in many cases, those very successful people had businesses that failed, had, gone through divorces, they lost their jobs. I mean, life was a shit show for them. And how, what was their next move in those situations? And so if you can, take me back in time to, one or a couple of moments for you where either some big transition was forced on you or you made a really tough decision to make a change. What was that? And what was your next move that ultimately set you on a trajectory to where you are today?
I'm going to share two with you. One was when I had just gotten out of college, and I graduated from college back in 1989, well before the turn of the century. And it's funny. I was in a whole situation in 1989. The economy was not good, and I couldn't find a job, and I'd been pumped full of shit by the world that I was graduating from William and Mary, which is one of the top schools in the nation. And the best job I could find was delivering pizzas for Domino's. And in the course of 18 months, I quit or got fired from 7 different jobs, all of them sales jobs, interestingly enough. And then it was funny, I was in a sales job. I was actually working for Nutrisystem, and I was selling weight loss in a center in a strip mall. And I sold a lady into Nutrisystem, sold her full boat. She said, man, you're really good at sales. I said, well, thanks. And she said, you'd be really good in my business. And I looked at her and I said, well, what business are you in? I've been in a bunch. And she said, I was in the mortgage business. And I said, the mortgage business? Now that's interesting. What's that all about? And so she basically told me, and I said, I could do that. I could sell people money. And so to make a long story short, I was in a really bad relationship. Things were not good. I was living with a girl, had been living with her for a couple of years. And my life was just going day to day to day. And I don't know why, but I had a moment of clarity with the whole thing and I could see myself succeeding at being in the mortgage business. Mm-hmm. And so I went from making about $6,000 a year driving for Domino's to within 18 months, I was making 6 figures as a mortgage banker and had bought my own house, was driving a paid for car, was wearing $400 suits.
Oh my God.
Now, here's the interesting part. What I didn't have was a frame of reference. I had the frame of reference for being poor, but I didn't have the frame of reference for being successful and what was actually going on. And so I ended up screwing up royally. I thought my shit didn't stink. I thought that everything I did was going to turn to gold from that point on. I made some really bad business decisions. And I ended up losing everything that I had built up. I ended up having to sell my house. I ultimately ended up about 5 years later had to declare bankruptcy just with the carryover for everything. But the first thing that I want everybody to understand is that what you see is not at all what is on the inside. And that just because you found success doesn't mean success is going to last forever, that success can't be kicked out from under you. We're on a journey. It's not a destination. And most people think, someday when I have $1 million in the bank, someday when my house is paid off, someday when I have, $5,000 in the bank, whatever. I remember when I thought, man, if I could just have $5,000 in the bank, my life, I'd be in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
But if your bills are $1,000 a month, that's fine. So that's the first thing is you don't know. And most people don't learn from the stuff that happens to them either. That's why you see this endless cycle of up and down and debt and feast, famine, all that good stuff. And what I learned from that was, holy shit, I need to be careful. Because I went from making six figures and, smacking my gun, big pimping, walking down the street to owing the IRS $3,500 and sitting in my accountant's office with my wife crying, like, how in the hell are we going to pay this? And begging the IRS to let me have a payment plan. Wow. So the thing is, from the seed of that came a really good set of rules that I live by. And I'll share those with you real quick. One is I always make sure the IRS gets paid first. Yeah. That money always gets set aside. Learn that from working on commission. Always live off of last year's money, not next year's money. So what that means is you're not spending the money you're making right now. You're spending the money you made last year, which means you have large cushions. You live way beneath your means. That's why I crack up when I see these guys driving these sports cars and other stuff like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got a Rolls Royce sitting in my garage, but you know what? I bought my Rolls Royce from a guy who was desperate to sell his Rolls Royce because he had overextended himself. And I was the asshole that took it from him at a price that made him just want to cry, because I had the cash. I had the money. I wasn't spending next year's money. So, and the other thing is, nobody manages your money but you. Nobody signs your checks but you. Nobody invests your money but you. Yeah. Do not trust money managers. Do not trust bankers. Do not trust accountants. You can use them, but you need to trust but verify. And typically, now we only manage our own investments. I do have an accountant, but I watch him like a hawk. Sure. So that's the first event. Was I thought that I had it all figured out. And I got punched in the face by life really, really fast because I thought my shit didn't stink. So then I decided to start a web business with a buddy of mine, my best friend from college. And he and I started a business. And I didn't know anything about starting a real business. So, of course, we went and got a lawyer, and we used his lawyer, actually his wife's lawyer. And since he was putting up the money, the agreement that we signed was basically they own 95% of the company, and I was buying my way in. I made the shittiest business agreement you could ever make in your whole life. But I learned from it. And I'll shortcut the story. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I was the one who was out selling the websites. I was the one making the websites. I was the one writing the sales copy for the websites that we were selling. We were vastly underpricing them. My friend was supposed to be doing all the technical stuff, but he actually didn't know how to do the technical stuff. All he knew how to do was spend money on equipment that he would then sit there and fuck around with and not know what to do. Right. And so I'm really getting back into what was going on. I don't really think about this too much because there's no point in thinking about the past. For real. I mean, I don't dwell on this shit. So So what ended up happening was I was working for months and months and months and not getting paid. I think for the whole year of 1998, I made something like $5,500 was all I made for an entire year. Now, to put that into perspective, $5,500 is a bad day for me now.
Wow.
So the bottom line was I ended up getting so stressed out for so long. I developed a heart condition. I have atrial fibrillation, which, for those of you who don't know, basically your heart doesn't beat right, and the upper chambers will beat as fast as 170 beats per minute. They start pooling blood, and you can have a stroke. And so I had an attack of this one day, just out of the blue, and ended up in the hospital. They were hitting me with those paddles, like Clear and all that stuff to try and, get my heart rhythm back. And I was just done. I was laying in a hospital bed, and I had all this debt, and I had all this stuff. And I just said, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore.
Oh my God.
And so I just told my wife, I said, we just have to do whatever we have to do to get out from under this.
Right.
And so we ended up declaring bankruptcy. I ended up just leaving the company, and I took a job for a company that was paying me $1,500 a month. And I was grateful to be making $1,500 a month. And, but it was, even though I had totally hit rock bottom, I found that I was a lot calmer because I'd let go of that big weight that there was no way I was ever going to be able to do anything with it. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, the total amount of money that we declared bankruptcy over was like $22,500. That's not even a good American Express bill for me now for a month. And so but what I'm saying is, it's all about perspective. Right. And so I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that, that's the difference in perspective. So what ended up happening is I went to work for this company. I had been writing for the newspaper, and I, went to work for this company. They were doing internet stuff, driving traffic for other businesses. And I was sitting there, and I was looking at what the company was doing, and everything was trading time for money. Mm-hmm. And I said, a lot of people would like to learn how to do partly what we do. And so I had learned how to use this software called, Lotus Screen Cam. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Oh my
God. Yeah, I do.
That's from way back in the day. So I had figured out, just on my own, how to make Lotus Screen Cam videos and embed them into PDF files and burn them to CD-ROMs so that we could sell video products. And I created this whole product. And in the short course of 3 months, I sold $300,000 worth of software for this guy. And it was software, but it was training videos. Mm-hmm. And we ended up, he got invited to speak. He couldn't speak. He wasn't a good speaker. So he said, hey, you need to come and speak with me. I spoke at this big conference in Boulder, Colorado. And I met all these guys who were like, dude, where have you been? But it's like, where have I been? I've been getting ready for this for the last 10 years. Right. And so it wasn't over yet, though, because the guy ended up firing me because all these people, his name was Jim, all these people would call up and ask for Jim. And they'd be like, hey, he's like, hey, this is Jim. No, other Jim. Oh, God. And his ego was taking a beating. Yep, and just this stuff was happening. So he fired me, though he kept selling the CD that I made. And it just all kind of, went from there. And my wife said to me, and here, this, I guess, is the third turning point. He fired me, and my wife said to me, if you could make a third of what you made for him, for us, we'd be doing better than we've ever done since we got married.
Wow.
But the problem is you've only got 30 days to recreate that income. Otherwise, you're going to have to go get a job. And what she meant by get a job is you're going to go down and get a job at like Lowe's or something, just so we know.
Right.
So interestingly enough, in that moment, I made a decision. I said, I'm not going to go to work at Lowe's. I'm going to figure this shit out. I'm going to get this done. And the first step is I'm going to replace that income. And then I'm going to make I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to make $100,000 between now and the end of the year. And this was the middle of June in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to believe this, but this is the God's honest truth. 30 minutes later, I got a call from a lady that I had known from being in real estate, who I used to help her with a computer. She says, my assistant just quit. I need you to come work my computers for me and do this, and do some things for me. I said, I'm going to go for broke. I said, I will come work for you if you pay me $25 an hour, which I thought, shit, there's no way anybody's going to pay me $25 an hour. And I'll only work for you 4 hours a day. I'll come in from 1 to 5. So that'll be 20 hours a week at $25 an hour. And I won't be there till 1 and I'm leaving at 5. I figured she'd tell me go to hell. She said, sure. Can you start tomorrow? I was like, holy shit. I just replaced all my income and I freed up all my time. Now, this is a God's honest truth. This was within 30 minutes of when I came home from being fired from my job. So later that night, I had a conversation with a young man named Yannick Silver. He and I had met at that conference in Boulder the previous February, and I told him what was going on. He said, hey, you and I should write a book together. I said, okay. So we wrote a book that was basically a plan on how to do what I had done with ebooks and what he had done with other stuff. It was called 33 Days to Online Profits. And we put that together over the course of a couple of months. And I had another joint venture that popped up with another guy. Long story short, I didn't make the $100,000 between June and the end of the year. I made $250,000.
Oh my God.
So in gross sales. So the point was that when I got totally clear, when I totally let go of all the bullshit, and when I freed up my mind enough to be able to see the path forward and believe the path forward, that's in any time in my life, that is when things have changed and changed for the better. As opposed to when all I focus on is the crap that's going on and all the stuff that's going wrong or could go wrong or could go to hell. That's when stuff goes wrong and goes to hell. And so the problem is that most people wait until they're lying in a hospital bed, or until their wife is leaving them, or until they're fired from their job, or until their business fails, because that's the only time they seem willing to give themselves permission to do what's necessary instead of limping along doing the shit they've been doing all along. And what I'm telling you is the instant that you give yourself permission to do something different smartly, not stupidly, like, hey, I want to make $1 million and I believe what this MLM person is telling me, so I'm going to quit my fucking job and mortgage my house. No, that's stupid. But when you say, okay, I want to get here, so what do I need to do? So I got to replace my income, or I have to replace enough of my income and reduce my expenditure so that I keep ass and mouth and everything together while I'm working on this other thing. And then I have to be willing to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm getting in a full work day in addition to the other stuff that I'm doing and making those sacrifices. But you don't have to wait until that cataclysmic event, but most people do, because that's the only time you ever have enough balls to make a change, or you find yourself in a position where you have nothing to lose. And what I am going to tell you as someone who has been diagnosed with heart failure and went on within 6 months of that diagnosis to run a half marathon, you are in control of your destiny. You are the one who takes control of the reins of your life the instant you decide to do it. But the keys to doing it are to know exactly what you want, why you want it, believe you can make it happen, and have faith that it's coming, because faith is what will keep you taking the actions that you necessarily need to take in order to bring it about. So that was a long-winded. I'm not even sure if I gave you what you wanted.
Oh my God, Jim, this has been absolutely magnificent. And I know we have a hard stop on time today. I got another 5-10 minutes if you need it. Oh, beautiful. Well, I have about maybe 4,000 questions for you, and we will not be able to get to this today. And I would hope that I can have you come back where we can have an extended conversation about the kinds of challenges that you face, a number of which you referenced today, but to really dig into, how did you actually manage to get through that time? Because one of the things that happens to people all the time is that their emotions get the better of them and they become paralyzed. And so I think it would be really instructive, for someone who is as successful as you are and who's gone through all of the things that you have, you just kept moving, and everything was, what's my next move? What's my next move? And that's the whole point of all of this. And so I would hope that I get a chance to get a half an hour of your time again. And clearly, everything you just said in the last couple of minutes are probably the answer to the question that I usually ask at the end, is if you had any thoughts for people who are struggling and, finding themselves in a situation where they can't move forward, what kind of advice would you give them, or an encouragement? And you just laid it all out, so I'm not even going to ask you that question.
The one I would like to address that real quick,
sure.
and that would be to say that most people pull their self-worth from their paycheck or from their house or from their car. You are not your car. You're not your paycheck. You're not your job. You are who you are, and you need to be a person of integrity. You need to be a loving person. You need to be somebody who is focused forward and outward most of the time, but also have the ability to look back and learn from it, and also to be able to focus inward to find the answers that you need. Most people are looking for someone or something to come along and save them. The only person who's going to save you is you.
Right. Absolutely. No question about that. And I think one of the most salient points that you made today was just about how when you give yourself permission to go forward with things, and you do it with conviction, where you absolutely have faith that everything is going to be okay, just like you said in what happened to you, where within 30 minutes of you deciding to leave your job, your wife says to you, this is what has to happen in the next 30 days. And you deciding, you knew in that instant what you needed to do in response to that and what you were going to do in response to that. And within seconds, the phone rings. And I believe it's all about that conviction, because when you have it, there is nothing that can stop you, because it is the power of your belief that is going to carry you through the really tough times.
That's right.
Beautiful. Well, Jim, thank you so much for this. Let me ask you, for the benefit of our listeners, where can they reach you if they want to talk to you, hire you, buy your programs? How can people get a hold of you, and what can they find when they find you?
If you want to check out what I'm doing, you can go to thejimedwardsmethod.com, thejimedwardsmethod.com. And that's where my blog is. I've got links to all my different software and stuff. And so that would be the way. And then we got links to me on Facebook and whatnot. And
perfect.
The biggest thing I would just like, if you were going to ask me for a parting thought, this would be my parting thought, is that no matter how old you are, or no matter how far down you are, how high up you are, you have to be constantly vigilant about where you are, what you're paying attention to, what you're saying to yourself, the actions that you're taking, because the only person that will keep you down over the long haul is you, and the only person who will keep you up over the long haul is you, through the value that you give out to the world. Mm-hmm. And if your life isn't where you want it to be, either personally or professionally, don't blame other people. Don't look outside yourself. Look inside yourself and ask, what value am I bringing to this relationship? What value am I bringing to this business? And that will pretty much help you to identify either you're bringing value and the other person's not appreciating it, or you're asking people to give you something, whether it's love or money, in return for not the right amount of value for what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'm trying to encapsulate 6 months of talking into 60 seconds, but that's another big thing. There's just, it's all about a value exchange, and you need to be a person of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you just think about personal relationships, everyone is about pointing the finger at the other person and what they've done wrong and how they've harmed me and all this kind of bullshit, instead of looking at it and saying, what kind of value am I bringing to this person that I'm in a relationship with? Because when you give, you get tenfold. It's just the way it works. It's kind of like a law. Well, Jim, thank you so very much for this. This has been just delightful, and I look forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to come back.
That'd be terrific. I'll look forward to it. We'll get it set up. So for all of you who are listening, I hope you enjoyed that. And when you think about where you're at in your own life, ask yourself the question, what's your next move? I'm Arlene Battishill. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back with another episode. Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen, but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battishill, and I want to know, what's your next move?